Veterans, if you are sitting at a 90% rating right now, I need you to pay very close attention. What I'm about to break down for you could be the only thing that saves the benefits you have already fought to earn. Most veterans stuck at 90% fall into a dangerous trap because they think they're just one small claim away from hitting that 100% mark. Here is the gut punch that nobody wants to hear. In the world of VA math, 90 plus 10% does not equal 100%, but instead it equals 91%. They're using a system called the whole person method, and once you understand the mechanics of it, you will see why chasing that final 10% is a much steeper mountain than it sounds. Think of it this way, the VA starts by looking at you as a 100% whole person. When they give you a disability rating, they subtract that percentage from your wholeness to see what is left. If your final rating is at 90%, the VA decides you only have 10% of a whole person left to work with. Now, let's say you decide to file a new 10% claim on top of that existing 90% rating. Instead of adding 10 to 90, the VA takes 10% of that remaining 10% slice of your health, which only adds up to a 1% increase. For many veterans, that puts the combined rating at around 91%, which still rounds down back to 90%. The exact number can shift slightly depending on what your underlying raw score actually is, but the point holds, you are not getting a clean 10-point jump. The examiner isn't hunting for ways to cut you, but if the evidence in your file suggests a condition has materially improved, that can set off a separate review process you weren't expecting. We guided a veteran after he went through this exact situation when he tried to file a loan. Before, he was sitting at a solid 90% with strong ratings across the board and filed a straightforward secondary claim for his knee. During that exam, findings related to his 40% back rating surfaced in the record and flagged signs of improvement. He walked out of that room with a proposed reduction on a rating he had relied on for years, all because he didn't map out the risk before he filed. The math isn't broken, it's intentional, and the VA is not going to call you up to give you a heads up before you walk into that trap. Here's the inside scoop that the VA will not tell you. When you file for a new condition or ask for an increase, you are essentially inviting the VA to re-examine your entire folder. During that review, the rater is searching for one thing specifically, and that is improvement under ordinary conditions. Under 38 CFR, if the VA determines your condition has materially improved, they have the legal authority to reduce your rating. They don't need to show you were cured. The standard is whether you showed improvement during the normal flow of everyday life, not during a flare-up, but on a regular Tuesday. That reduction process does include due process protections, but understanding that standard exists is what gives you the edge before you file anything. Now, not every rating carries the same amount of risk, so you need to know your own file cold before you submit a single form. If you have been rated for less than 5 years, those ratings generally have fewer stabilization protections than long-standing ratings. The VA still must follow due process, provide notice, and give you time to respond. But the bar for initiating a review is lower than it is for ratings that have been on the books for years. Once you hit the 5-year mark, you finally get some real protections. At 5 years or more, the VA has to prove sustained improvement, which means they can't just point at one exam where you had a good day. That is a much higher standard for them to meet. If you've held that rating for 10 years, they can't terminate it unless you have clear evidence of fraud. At that point, it becomes much harder for them to touch your money. If you make it to 20 years, that rating is officially protected and a reduction is virtually off the table. Before you file anything, you must know exactly where each of these conditions sits on that timeline. The risk calculation changes completely depending on how long you've held your current percentage. We helped a veteran navigate this exact situation. He had a 70% PTSD rating he had held for 3 years and filed for an increase. During his C&P exam, the examiner noted that his reported symptoms showed improvement from his previous evaluation. Instead of getting a bump, his rating dropped from 70% down to 50%, and he lost ground on a claim he thought would push him over the finish line. Most people skip this part of the strategy, but there are safer ways to hit that 100% mark without putting a giant target on your back. The first path you need to master is TDIU, which stands for Total Disability Based on Individual Unemployability. If you are sitting at 90% right now, you need to understand this option before you file for anything else. If your service-connected issues stop you from holding down a steady job, you may be able to get paid at the 100% rate without actually being rated at 100%. You get the same compensation, but you don't have to chase a number that the math is working against. The eligibility thresholds under 38 CFR 4.16 alpha are straightforward. You generally need one condition rated at 60% or higher, or a combined rating of 70% where at least one of those conditions sits at 40% or more. Many veterans already at 90% combined may already meet the scheduler threshold for TDIU consideration, and they just don't realize it. Now, filing for TDIU can still involve a C&P exam and its own review process. So it's not a zero risk move, but it does mean you may be able to pursue 100% compensation without filing new unrelated claims and opening up conditions you've already secured. The second path involves secondary claims, but you only take this route when the medical connection is rock solid and well documented. Well-supported secondary claims may involve less evidentiary risk than entirely new primary claims, especially when the connection to an existing service-connected condition is already clearly established in your records. That said, some secondary claims like radiculopathy tied to a spine rating or a mental health overlap are deeply intertwined with existing conditions and carry their own risk. If you have to stretch to explain how condition B connects to condition A, that's a sign to slow down. You want the link backed by medical evidence that's hard to argue with. The third thing you have to grasp is that rating timeline we talked about earlier. 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years are not just random numbers on a calendar. These are legal guardrails under 38 CFR that dictate exactly what the VA can and cannot do to your existing ratings. If your conditions are pushing past those time thresholds, your risk profile looks completely different than a veteran who just got rated last year. You need to pull your rating history and map out your timeline before you make a single move. We helped a veteran navigate this exact situation. He was stuck at 90% and so frustrated he was ready to file for anything just to see that 100% number. After we helped him review his file, he realized he already qualified for TDIU. He filed his own claim and got that 100% pay he needed. His existing ratings stayed exactly where they were, which meant no new C&P exams and zero risk of a reduction. He focused on the outcome instead of chasing a number, and there is always more than one road to reach your objective. Head over to VetClaims.ai so we can help you navigate the process and get the rating you deserve. You are the one filing this claim, and we want to make sure you go in prepared. We will help you build a strong case for your service-connected conditions based on the true severity, frequency, and functional impact of what you've been carrying since your time in service, and give your claim its best chances for success without putting your entire livelihood on the line. If you need help navigating the claims process, head on over to VetClaims.ai. We've helped veterans work through exactly this kind of documentation challenge. Not by filing for you, but by making sure you know exactly what you're doing and why. And leave a comment letting us know which topic you want us to cover next.